educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank y'all very much for coming on today. I have a gentleman who has been featured on CBS News, LinkedIn, the Huffington Post, and many more. And he has partnered with renowned organizations like Panasonic, Marriott Hotels, and Thermo Fisher Scientific. He is a seasoned hiring consultant who specializes in guiding highly educated professionals, doctors, dentists, attorneys, and more, maybe even yourself, toward hiring impactful problem solvers. With a decade of experience in placing over 5,000 high achievers, he has a wealth of insights into optimizing the hiring process. I thank y'all for listening today. I bring on Kolby. Kolby, thanks very much for coming on to the show.
Maurice, thank you so much for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be on.
Sure, no problem. So as we were talking in the green room, right, I understand that your background is in hiring practices and insights and all those type of things, right? But we had talked about, turning our side hustle into, our main job, maybe, possibly,
hustle, yeah.
Right? Possibly, right. So you said that you started off as a main hustle and went into you started off as a side hustle, went into your main hustle. So first of all, what encouraged you to consider the side hustle and then transition into your main hustle?
Yeah. So in a previous life of mine, as we talked about earlier, I was an IT operations manager, which meant I was fixing computers, getting under desks. I was standing up big data centers with servers. I was a relatively small company, so I wore all the hats at the same time all the time.
Right.
And it was, I really loved IT at the beginning of my career, kind of postgraduate, but had kind of come to a point where I was working on projects I didn't really care about anymore, working with people that I could not stand, making people I'd never met a bunch of money. And it was kind of this slow and fast revelation of this is not the kind of value I want to put into the world. This is not what I want to be doing forever. And so with that, kind of looked internally and said, all right, what can I bring to the world? How can I add value to other people while developing a lifestyle for myself? And my initial outreach was in career coaching and career ownership. So helping people find better jobs. And I did that. I put myself out on the internet and said, hey, I'm doing this now. Come call me if you want a free consultation. I'll review your resume. We'll talk about your interviews. We'll help you develop a strategy. And I got my first 10 clients, all pro bono. But what I asked of them was to say, if you got any value out of this today, could you tell 2 people? And if you're inclined, could you share about this on the internet? And that blossomed. And all this was while I was still working my traditional 9 to 5. I was taking, sales and coaching calls on my lunch break. I was coming home and burying myself in the guest room, doing work. Luckily, my girlfriend, then fiance, now wife, and now mother of my child, decided to stick it out with me as I kind of built this business over a year moonlighting. And it was hard, but it was fun. Like it felt like a game.
Right.
And that's how I looked at making the leap and putting in that 2-week notice after about a year of moonlighting was, okay, Kolby, like I kind of called it like I'm renting my freedom. Right. We're going to see how this goes for 1 year. If it doesn't work, we can always go back. And I was very fortunate to build up enough process and enough momentum and have enough impact to fast forward 10 years later. Here I am evolving my business, helping more people, and being able to build a lifestyle that really resonates with who I want to be and how I want to show up into the world.
So there's a term that you just coined, being pro bono, right? And I said that because a lot of times we get caught up with these golden handcuffs, and we don't want to leave the job because we're nervous about, hey, we have bills, we have cars, we have houses, we have kids, we have, whatever. We want to live an extravagant lifestyle, whatever it is, right? I just want to make sure I continue to eat shrimp and lobster every Friday, whatever it might be, But a lot of times people don't understand that we have to do things on a pro bono basis to get started, to get moving. So what encouraged you to keep it going, even though you may not be making as much money to pay a bill?
Yeah. So for me, it's about experimentation. You have to prove the model, right? And so, coming from an IT background, and I was doing IT inside of software development houses. And one thing that a prominent leader in the organization told me was that if your 1.0 version is perfect, you're too late. And so I saw those pro bono clients as a way for me to hone my craft, to try and experiment. And it gave me the permission to not be perfect because they weren't paying for it. And I think that's what a lot of people, hang up on, is it has to be a viable model. I think you need to hone and you need to craft and you need to standardize before you scale. And so doing that kind of work and making those experiments helped me get to a place where I could build momentum. But in addition, getting out those kinks early, making those failures fast and with little stakes allowed me, once I left my 9-to-5 and started on my first day at my new life, it allowed me to scale more because I was able to be more efficient, be more systematized, and I wasn't trying to build the plane before I landed it.
Wow, interesting. So you made a statement also. You keep giving up all these nuggets, Kolby. So unfortunately, I think what happens is that when we go into any project, a lot of us want to be perfect just starting out the gate because maybe it's our own perception of ourselves. We want to present our best selves out to the world, right? And not understanding that it does take time because, so in our impatience of being perfect, we get frustrated, we get discouraged, all those type of things. What kept you staying, even with that, understanding, hey, I'm not perfect, but staying encouraged because a lot of times perfection throws us off. It makes us procrastinate. So what? How did you stay motivated in that?
It's a very good question. I think it's understanding that it's only a failure if you don't learn from it. Right? Because and two, you cannot build in private. You have to build in public. You have to launch it. If you're looking to make money from others, you got to put it out there at some point. And I think you made a very good point. Perfectionism is just a form of false productive procrastination. And so, and I'm a victim of it. Like, it happens to me very regularly. And I think what I've learned is that that's who I am sometimes. And it's not getting mad at myself for having those feelings, but it's about, okay, how do I pull myself out of it? And so, looking back all the way then, it was, I definitely, whenever I get a bad review or, the occasional refund request, like I would go into a deep spiral. And it was about kind of understanding, well, what is this trying to teach me? Why is this happening for me and not to me? Like, a lot of people can go into the to me state, right? Where it's really easy to play the victim.
Right.
Too easy. But the problem is you stay there. And so if you switch that one word from 2 to 4, why is this happening for me? For me, that's been a light in saying, okay, what is this trying to teach me? What is this? What is the universe or God or Allah or the Buddha or Mother Nature, whoever's out there? What are they trying to teach me? And I think that's been a way for me to look at the setbacks without much regret or guilt, and has given me a much better place to come from to take more risks, right? Because if you think that your only risk is going to be leaving your 9-to-5 to go do your go build your business, if that's your only risk you're going to take, you're lying to yourself. Every time you log into your email, every time you get on a sales call, every time you're serving a customer, it's a risk.
Right.
And so you need to be becoming more risk tolerant. You need to be becoming risk welcoming. And so if you can do that in your normal life and kind of leave that comfort zone, it's going to make this process not easy, but definitely easier.
So you talked about doing this side hustle, right? and we talked about, you're starting off this side hustle. We're trying to stay motivated in this. A lot of times we forget our why. Why are we doing this? So at what point in time did you understand your why into what you're doing, who you're trying to serve, all those type of things? Because a lot of times we miss that part. So at what point did you find your why?
I mean, I kind of mentioned it in my origin story, so to speak, right? Was that I was looking around and saying, I'm just here as a cog in the machine. Mm-hmm. And for me, my why was I need to make a meaningful impact on other people. Mm-hmm. And the way that I do that is helping them improve their own careers, their own self-worth, their own lives, the lives of their families, by taking better ownership and pride in the work they do and the impact that they have, so they can develop that. Right. For me, it's I'm in a unique position where it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. Right. Like I'm able to live out my vision and my why by helping other people live out their visions, their whys. Mm-hmm. And I think it's from there, I kind of know it in my heart of hearts that as long as I continue to add genuine value to the people around me, I will be okay. Bills checks will come in, the bills will be paid. People will refer other clients. Like I'll get featured on, more podcasts to share my story. As long as you're genuine in what they do. And I think that's, not to go on a bit of a soapbox here, I think that's my concern with kind of modern side hustle culture, is that it's all about the money, right? Like, and trust me, I was there. I was trying to do drop shipping. I've built my fair share of e-commerce websites. I tried affiliate marketing. Like I was young and nubile in the late 2000s and early 2010s trying to make a buck online. But looking back, why none of that never stuck was because I didn't have my heart in it. Right. The money would, the money will follow. And again, not to pile on more cliches, but I think if you genuinely look to add genuine value, like impactful, meaningful value to others, you are going to eventually find a way to make that a sustainable lifestyle for you, so that it becomes reciprocal.
So because you found your why, do you feel as though or you understand your why, do you feel as though that you love what you do?
Oh my goodness, man. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and let me be clear here. There are days that I don't. There are days that are hard, that I question myself. But that is okay. Like I'm not, in a lot of the entrepreneurs I talk to, they think it should all be roses and rainbows, and it doesn't, and it can't be. Right. Because if you don't hit those lows, the highs don't feel as high. And so for me, it is, I really do love what I do. Like I joke that I talk and I type for a living, right? I don't dig a ditch. I'm not hammering a nail. Like I have a pretty good life, but with that, it allows me to, again, have a genuine impact, develop relationships with other people that I would have never met, never come across in my daily life, and also give myself an opportunity in running this business and growing this business to learn a ton about myself. Because if I'm going to work for myself, my boss better be like in good mental and emotional state. And my one employee better be the same. And so it's allowed me to really dig deep and to do some self-learning and build up my self-awareness, because it works for me. And then luckily for me, it then becomes lessons I can help my clients learn as well. And so I love what I do. And I think I'm very lucky and blessed to have this kind of impact on the world. And I'm in a place now where I see myself doing this until I physically can't anymore. So,
and so now I'm going to go back to why I brought up the why, because as I stated, sometimes we lose it. Now you've expressed that you love what you're doing and you feel as though you're making an impact. And through that, now you have to look in the mirror. Here's what I mean by looking in the mirror. Sometimes we don't understand that, hey, these reviews that we're getting, right, are reflective of the type of work that we're presenting, how we're getting things accomplished, deadlines, whatever it might be. One. Number two, it might be also reflective on the word of mouth advertising that you also mentioned, right? So A lot of times we don't want that type of feedback. We don't want to look in the mirror to say, hey, we're messing up. So how important was that for you to understand, hey, I'm at this place. I thought I was perfect. I love what I do, but now I'm getting these reviews and it might not be what I'm expecting. So how important was that for you to grow to the point where you are today?
Yeah. I mean, for me, what I learned through all that was that when I read those reviews or when I got that refund request, it was the first time I had heard, I felt those people feel that way. Like I learned that people had felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I got better at looking out for some of those signs, the disengagement, the shortness, the lack of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I noticed it, I was like, okay, I got to make sure I prevent this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I took it upon myself, but also realizing too, it's like, I can't prevent everything.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can do is provide a space to have the conversation. Hey, you know what? I haven't heard back from you in the last 3 emails. Like, A, I hope everything's medically okay with you. But B, like, I'm wondering, why aren't you as engaged in this process as we were when we started?
Mm-hmm.
And just giving somebody the space to have the conversation. And what I learned from that is I need to be seeking those uncomfortable conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I think we tend, kind of like perfectionism, right? Like we tend to hide, we tend to put the wool over our eyes. And it's when you start seeking out that feedback, you start giving people a platform to share their experience, their feelings, their hopes, their disappointments, is when actually the relationship becomes stronger. What I'm really proud of is that a vast majority of the poor reviews or the refund requests that I've gotten, I've been able to turn around, right? And not because I was desperate and through the kitchen to get them for them to come back. I didn't beg on my knees, but I said, hey, like I'm going to process this refund for you, but let me use this as a learning experience for me, but how you felt and how to, and that has allowed me to say to people, okay, like let's have one more session, or okay, like let's finish up the resume. Like it's been really helpful in forcing me outside my comfort zone to go and seek the bad and the uncomfortable.
So what was it that flipped the switch that told you, you know what, I'm going to turn this side hustle into my main hustle, my everyday? So what was that switch that flipped?
So I'm a very analytical person. I'm a former techie. I'm a forever nerd. And so I was very strategic and meticulous about this whole journey. So when I knew that I wanted to leave my job and I wanted to start my own business, I wanted to make sure I did it in a financially responsible way. So I engaged my financial planner / best friend / best man at my wedding to say, hey, Adam, this is what I want to do. I don't know how to get there, but I need your help in figuring out these milestones. I said, all right, like, let me figure out all of the savings goals. Let's figure out all the revenue goals. Let's figure out what your costs are. And so I kind of really looked at it that way. And with that, I had an end goal. And I had an end timeline. And actually, I beat the timeline by about 6 months. My original plan was to moonlight for 18 months and reevaluate. But I got to a place about a year after, and when I got really serious, and I said, okay, I'm at and I remember the meeting. He said, Kolby, you're ready. And I said, I might be ready financially, but I'm not ready emotionally. Because it's hard. As much as I wanted this thing, right? Leaving the security, even though it was this prison and it was this excessive stress, like it's still, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
Right.
And so it came to a point where I could the equation was I could do 2 jobs kind of okay, or I could do 1 job extremely to the top of my capability. All right. And so when I made that decision, and I mentioned this earlier in the conversation, I looked at it as renting my freedom. It was an experiment. It was not a permanent choice. I could revert back. I'll admit to you here, one of my biggest fears when there's a lull in sales or there's a dip or there's a hardship in the business, my biggest fear isn't being homeless. It's not losing the house. It's, I don't want to have to go back and get another job. And so, but it's there. It is not it's a worst case scenario, but it's not that bad. And so once I remember it took me, by the time I had the meeting with Adam, by the time I talked to my girlfriend, who would become my wife, I had my resignation letter written, and it took me about a week to actually go hand it to my boss. And it was really nerve-wracking. And it was really, the second I did it, I had thought I made a mistake, and I kind of got okay with it, and the nerves kind of settled down a little bit. And I remember leaving that last day and kind of doing the movie, the cinematic movie walk away from the front door, and breathing a bit of a sigh of relief, but knowing the work was going to start. And I said that was 10 years ago now, which is crazy to think. And it hasn't been perfect, but it's been amazing.
So the reason why I wanted the listeners to kind of go through your journey, right? Excuse me. We talked about the pain points that someone has to go through and getting to the point of where you are today, because no matter what the situation is, you have learned from it, you've grown from it, and now you're able to voice it on this podcast to say, you know what? I'm over this hump. You can do it too, right? So, and you're a perfect, example of that, but Kolby, I appreciate you telling your story today. I appreciate you coming on and sharing today, man.
It's been a pleasure, Maurice. I appreciate it. What I can tell your listeners here is that there's no formula. There's a little bit of best practice. I hope I inspire, but with that too, a remembrance that when you trip and fall, it's okay. It's a learning lesson. Like, there's no perfect journey. There's just yours. So go out there. And if you're not living that, time to make a change.
Nice. So let me ask you this. How can people find you? How can they reach out to you to maybe see your snippets of inspiration, or maybe, for what you do, which is you're hiring individuals, right? Maybe they want to pick your brain, or maybe I need some keywords or whatever it is, right? So how can they reach out to you and talk to you?
Best way to find me, Maurice, is going to go on to LinkedIn, Kolby Goodman, Kolby, last name Goodman. Connect me there. Let me know that you heard me here on the podcast. Or if you want to reach out directly, just go to kolbygoodman.com. Reach out, and we'll see how I can help.
Cool. So Kolby, before I let you go, man, I got to ask you my question, bro. Would you rather choose a fork in the road or 3 doors?
That's a good question. I am a self-diagnosed person who is paralyzed by choice. Wow. I joke that probably my worst nightmare is having to eat at the Cheesecake Factory. There's just too many options, man. I don't like it. And I know you're there. You're an East Coaster, but here on the West Coast we have something called In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah.
If you haven't had the pleasure, definitely recommend it. But they only have like 3 things on the menu, and it's the best. So for me, it's 2 doors. Give me 2 choices. Give me that fork, right? 2 things allow me to do that because I can choose quicker, but also 2, as I mentioned before, that's the wrong choice. I just walk back to that fork and take the other road.
You make it sound so simple.
I'm sorry about that, everybody. It is not simple. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but hopefully it's a mindset you can take here to give yourself some space and grace as you go and experiment with your business and your life and try to make the most of it.
Nice. Kolby, thanks a lot for coming on today.
Maurice, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for the invigorating conversation, and hope to connect with you again here soon.
All right, most definitely. And thank y'all for listening to That Will Never Work podcast, and I will talk to y'all a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?